Hi everyone. Okay, so I wanted to make a video response to Melissa's video regarding adoption. Her screen name here on YouTube is babydreams87. She's also trying to conceive, and so I thought, we have two things in common. My adoption story is quite different than hers. Everybody has a different story. And reason why they were put up for adoption. My situation is that my mother was 16, my father was, little Nat, was 18, and they were young and not ready to be parents. They did try, it just didn't work. And so now I could be wrong here, but I believe my adoption was finalized when I was 6 months old. And I was adopted by my biological grandmother on my father's side. So, and that had its benefits and its negatives too. As far as being adopted to a family member. The one benefit I will say is that I always knew who my parents were, and I always had them in my life in various degrees. My mom, my adopted mom, my grandma never, I always called her mom, by the way, so I have two moms. She never kept me from them or kept me from knowing any information or anything like that. However, as far as why I was adopted and what went down, before I was born, shortly after, and before I was adopted, everybody has a different story. And there's a lot of anger and resentment towards each other. My mom, on the other hand, I don't think she really, this is my biological mom, I don't think she really harbors any anger or resentment towards my father. I don't think, or at least she doesn't let me know it. My father, on the other hand, he wants to blame everything on my mom. So, but he's kind of a loose, I can't say he's kind of a loose cannon. He is a loose cannon. And we don't have a very good relationship because of that. I actually haven't spoken to him in 2 years, but that's a whole other video topic right there. So as far as my views on adoption, I think adoption is great, and it's an avenue that me and my husband have talked about. I've always wanted to adopt, even before I was ready to become a parent, and even before I knew I was infertile. I had no idea that I would have the problems that I have now until I was, in my early 20s. As far as, my feelings towards my birth parents, I do hold resentment towards both of them to a point. I wonder if they could have tried harder. But a lot of that was my dad being on drugs, both of them being young, and neither one of them having a very good support system. Being uneducated, forced into, or I should say not forced, but guilted into a marriage that neither one of them really wanted to be in. They felt obligated to get married because she was pregnant. My mom's family, I won't go into any detail on that, but, her mother, she had no father. Her mother, wasn't good. And she really didn't have anybody to fall back on. My dad, on the other hand, he did have a support system to a point. I mean, obviously, I was adopted by his mother. And as far as my feelings towards my adoptive mother, she raised me as her own. The only problem, I guess, would be her jealousy towards my birth mother and our relationship. You know, that has caused some issues. Um, you know, especially, you know, she always made a point, you know, whenever we told anybody that I was adopted, she always exaggerated and, you know, well, I'm her mom. You know, she always had to throw that in there. Um, but whatever. Um, I have two moms. That's how I see it. So, um, and I love them both equally, different ways, but equally. Um, but I do have a really close relationship with my mother, like I said. Um, you know, I do hold some resentment towards her, um, because she moved away. My dad, he stayed in Oklahoma. He did move away for a little while, um, but he came back. But I still didn't really have much relationship with him and hardly ever seen him. So whatever. My mom, she moved clean across the country. So, like, had to fly to get there. Um, and you know, I do harbor some resentment towards her because of that. Um, you know, I wish she would have stayed. You know, I wish she would have tried harder to stay here. She did move back, but she was gone for 20 years. So that's kind of still kind of in the back of my mind, you know, sometimes that, you know, I wish she would have picked me instead of moving away. But that was 20 years ago. So, anyway, but as far as my adoption in general, I don't really have many bad feelings about it. That was almost 30 years ago. So, no matter how many, you know, resentful feelings I had towards either of them, they were both young, and they weren't ready to be parents. So, you know, in the end, I do think that the best decision was made, um, as far as letting someone else take the wheel in raising me. Um, yeah. But as far as, you know, some people, you know, put a negative aspect on adoption and, you know, consider it abandonment. And, you know, I look at it this way. Would you rather a child, you know, not have enough food in their belly and not have clothes on their back or a roof over their head, to be raised by their birth parents, or would you rather them be raised by someone else and have a good life? So, yeah, it has its pros and cons. No adoption is going to be perfect. So, anyways, I think I'll stop rambling now. And I just thought I would share a little bit of my story. So, all right. Bye bye, guys.